Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben's award-winning podcast, as voted by Grow Your Own magazine and by my followers and listeners. So if you're new to the podcast, make sure you click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts, listen back to all our previous episodes, sit back, grab a brew and let's enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome to Gardening with Ben, a podcast where we share tips and advice and generally just have a little chat with you all. So I hope you're all well. We're getting towards New Year's Eve now, where we can hopefully let us hair down and kickstart the new year and look forward to it. So today's episode we're going to talk about where do we find out how to garden and grow things. There's so much information out there sharing information about how to grow vegetables, tips to growing vegetables, different ways of growing vegetables. And that's the thing, how do you know which way to follow when you're growing something? And that is something that I always find hard and difficult. And the best way, I would say, to learn how to garden and how to grow something is via trial and error. And I've certainly been doing that for the last 16 years of having an allotment. What I tend to do when I'm learning about gardening is I read my gardening books. I've got so many gardening books, it's unbelievable. And if you're looking at getting some gardening books, my advice is either look on Amazon and get a good gardening book which is recommended by other people, or go to your local charity shop. Now that's what I did when I got a load of gardening books. I just went round all the different charity shops and got absolutely loads of gardening books. I must have bought about 10 to 15 because I do love reading and finding out different tips and advice. And most of the gardening books are very similar in the information that they give you to how to plant, when to plant, how to look after the plants. But there's so much great information out there which is very basic in what you need to do to learn how to grow. Now, the way I've also learned is by just trying to sow it, grow it and see how it gets on. So that is the way that I do it. And then what I also do is I follow a lot of people on Instagram and on Facebook, different gardening influencers, a bit like myself really. I share what I've learned and different ways of gardening myself, and I follow them for the same reason, because they might try growing something one way and then it might turn out fantastic. So you can get those tips from that person and try it yourself and see how you get on. And I've learned so many different methods of gardening from them, and I'm still learning all the time. That's the thing with gardening, I always say it never stops learning really. You're always learning new things in gardening. Nothing ever stays the same. It could work for one person one way and then it may not work another way, or you may try it and it doesn't work for you. You may try a different method and it works perfectly. So there's plenty of different ways of gardening, and if somebody tells you that you're doing it wrong, don't always listen to them, because it might work for you, and if it works for you, fantastic, and you can get some great produce from it. Now, some things that I have learnt from other people is growing carrots. I've seen people not growing carrots in the ground, they grow them in tubs and in drain pipes and stuff like that, and that gets some fantastic results. So I've been trying them for 16 years. I grow them every year in the ground and I never get a good result. So I am going to really try growing them in drain pipes and tubs next year to get some fantastic carrots, and hopefully I can share them on Instagram and show the result of how well they have grown. And then another way that I have learned about growing vegetables is for courgettes and marrows, because when you tend to water them, they can rot at the stem and the leaves get mildew on them, but I've learned that if you plant a plant pot at the side of it, you water into the plant pot and it directly waters the roots and stops the rotting on the stem. And that's what I've learned from seeing somebody on Facebook share. So it's always good to follow these different people on the pages. Don't just follow me, follow other people, and you will learn methods from them. And that is the way that I've learned how to garden, by following their tips and advice and their methods of growing. And I'm always learning new ways of growing, and I'm going to keep on following other people to see how they grow stuff, because you can get some fantastic crops from learning from these other people. And there's new methods and new ways coming out all the time, and it's exciting. It's one thing that's always evolving is gardening. You can stick to the old-fashioned methods of just growing it in the ground, or you can try the new methods, what people try themselves and share with other people. And that's the only way that we've learnt how to garden, is through their trial and error. They've tried it one way, it's worked for them, and they've shared it with other people, and other people have adapted it and used the idea. So it's always good to learn from other people and share tips and advice on how well you've done things. And that's the thing when I'm doing my gardening. If somebody tells me, oh, why don't you try it like this, I'll take it in and I'll learn it and I'll give it a go. So it's always great to get feedback from other people, and that's what I enjoy about my gardening. People giving me tips and advice, my followers giving me advice on how to do stuff and the best way of getting great crops. So listen to those around you and they will give you some fantastic advice. So around now, with it being not much in the garden season, I tend to use my gardening books and I'll just read through them, because there's so much to learn about different plants and different vegetables and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're not that interested, you just want to grow the fruit and vegetables, you can just grow the fruit and vegetables. But I want to learn so much more about them. It's very scientific growing fruit and vegetables, because the way that you have to look after them and treat them and experiment with the gardening. So I do love gardening, and I do love learning more, and there's so much more I do need to learn about it. I always say that I know lots about fruit and vegetables, but I don't know much about flowers. So that is one of my New Year's resolutions, is to learn lots and lots more about flowers. I'm going to be doing lots of articles on different flowers and stuff like that, and the only way that I'll be able to learn from that is by reading up on it myself. So the more articles that I write about flowers and talk about flowers on my podcasts, the more that I will learn about it. So as I say, people do ask me questions about flowers and shrubbery, and I always say I don't know, because it's not my area of expertise. It's something that I do want to learn, and that's one of the reasons why I've started growing more flowers down on the allotment, to learn as much as possible about growing them. And recently, obviously, I've been talking about houseplants. I'm wanting to learn more and more about houseplants and get tips and advice on how to grow them, and learn how to take cuttings from succulents and from different types of houseplants and try that way. So if you know anybody that's good at growing houseplants, let me know, because I do love to learn from different people, as I say. So hopefully next year we're going to be talking about different topics, talking about growing flowers, talk about growing houseplants, and sharing the tips and advice from there. So I'm going to start by getting my lists ready of what I want to grow and where I want to grow it on my allotment, because it's always good to plan the year ahead and share how I want to do it next year. if you don't have that plan in place, you don't know what you're going to be doing for the year. And it's always good to work out where you want to grow stuff and if it's going to grow well down on the allotment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the year ahead, and I'm going to give it my all next year. This year has been a total write-off. I hold my hands up at that, because I have had so many issues going on personally, and I felt like giving up on the plot, but the supporters and the friends that I've got around me has given me the confidence to keep it going and to keep on going down to the allotment, because some days I just go down to the allotment, I do my live, and then I go home again, and I really do struggle a lot at the moment. And I do appreciate all the messages that I do receive from you listeners and those that do listen to me. It's always great to hear who is listening to these podcasts, and it's nice to get a message from you, and it really does perk me up when I do get those messages. So if you're on Instagram, send me a message, let me know that you've listened to this episode, and hopefully we can have a great, fantastic new year. So until the next episode, I hope you all keep gardening, keep smiling, and keep listening to Gardening with Ben podcasts. So thank you for listening to today's episode of Gardening with Ben. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. Remember to do click that subscribe button to stay up to date with all our podcasts. Feel free to share them on your Instagram stories so that it spreads the word about my podcast and we get lots more listeners. Feel free to check out my social media sites, Facebook and Instagram as well, Gardening with Ben, and also my YouTube channel, to stay up to date with all my handy videos, how-to videos, and sharing my tips and advice. And feel free to check the link as well in the description for my Gardening with Ben t-shirts. Lots of funny gardening design t-shirts in there for you to purchase at great prices too. So thanks again, and as always, remember, keep smiling and keep gardening.